This is the Agribusiness Report. I'm Tony St. James, and we're joined today by the administrator of the EPA, Andrew Wheeler. He's the 15th administrator of the EPA, and it's great to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Let's talk just a moment. You've kind of been on a whirlwind tour of EPA's anniversary. You were out at the Nixon Library recently and mentioned 5 top priorities for EPA. That's exciting.
It is. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and President Nixon created the agency 50 years ago. So I thought it was fitting to go out there, and I talked about the last 50 years and then what we need to talk about, what we need to focus on for the future. And I laid out specifically 5 key items for the second term of the Trump administration.
One of those areas is 21st century water. How do you describe it?
Yes. Well, we're doing a number of things on water. We're looking at water reuse, water recycling. We're looking at nutrient trading. You know, for years, the agency was beating up farmers on nutrients issues. And what we instituted last year, as a pilot program, looking at nutrient trading as a way of a free market approach to trying to reduce the loading into the rivers and eventually the Great Lakes or the Chesapeake Bay. We want to work cooperatively with farmers. So what we want to do in the second term is wrap all of these programs into a 21st century approach to the water needs of this country and to address it in a complete manner, looking at everything at the same time.
You also, if I recall, mentioned that as we approach environmentalism, we need to do it at a community level. Does that tie in with these priorities as well?
Absolutely, because at a community level, particularly for water issues, it can vary greatly across our great country as far as what the pressing water issues are, and more importantly, what the solutions are to those problems. So we need to make sure that we have tailor-made solutions to address the problems on a local basis. But the community approach in particular is trying to provide the resources that the mayors, the cities, the local communities need in order to address their comprehensive environmental problems at one time. Not just focus on water, not just focus on air, but looking at everything that they face at the same time.
Sounds like a holistic approach, if you will, which really, I guess, ties into the second side of that when we talk about water. Pesticides always come up as well.
Sure, and pesticides, a holistic approach on pesticides is one of our 5 priorities for the second term. I'm sure your listeners are tired as I am of seeing these commercials on TV from trial lawyers attacking a pesticide by a pesticide basis, running ads with a lot of misinformation, trying to scare people into calling them and so forth. And what I don't think the American public understands, because that's what they base pesticides on, are these one-off commercials, one-off news articles. We have a very comprehensive approach to when we regulate a pesticide. When a manufacturer reaches out to us to register a pesticide for use by farmers and the agriculture community, we do a lot of research. We look at the science behind it. We look not just at the science of the pesticide itself, but once it's applied, how it's applied, safety factors for the applicators. We look at what the issue may be to the environment after it's been applied. And what we need to do is a better job of explaining to the American public our holistic approach to pesticide regulation so that people have more of a comfort and understanding on how these decisions are made.
Would you say that really ties into where we were and where we're going as well with waters of the U.S.?
Absolutely. On waters of the U.S., this was a very important regulation. President Trump talked about it on the campaign trail, and this has certainly been a promise made and a promise kept by President Trump. He said he wanted to do away with the Obama regulation, which was overly burdensome. It was onerous on the states, local communities, in particular farmers. I think the Iowa Ag Commissioner said that 98% of the state of Iowa would have fallen under federal jurisdiction. So what we did is we took a step back. We took a look at what the law says, the Clean Water Act, and we took a look at the Supreme Court decisions. And we put forward our navigable water protection rule, which rebalances the way we work with states and communities on wetlands regulations and protecting the national waterways. And we do it in a way of defining what is a federal waterway, and we also define what is not. And part of what we defined is not a federal waterway are farm ditches. For the most part, all farm ditches are out of the definition. And also prior converted cropland is out. So that's going to be, I think, a big positive for the agriculture community and the farmers, is the way that we are addressing the new waters of the U.S. Definitions for regulatory purposes. And we didn't just stop with putting out the regulation. We are now at this point in the process working with all of the Army Corps inspectors across the country to make sure that they understand what the rule is, so that it is applied evenly and fairly everywhere across the country. You shouldn't get a decision based upon the whims of a particular inspector. And I ran into that when I was in the private practice. I'm working with some of the inspectors around the country. You get a very difference of opinion as to what is a wetland, for example, depending on who within the Army Corps you reached out to. Going forward, they're all going to be working off the same guidelines and the same definitions, so that it is uniform and people are treated fairly and the same across the board.
And for those who might be thinking, well, we roll this back, we're losing our environmental protection here. That's not the case.
It is not the case. You know, a lot of these waterways are actually protected under state law. So you had a double burden of both federal and state. And you know, there's a lot of important waterways. I was asked, well, what's the impact going to be on the Chesapeake Bay, or what's the impact going to be on the Everglades or the Great Lakes? We have other programs that address the water quality in those bodies of water, and we have other regulatory powers as well. So there's not going to be any decrease in protection. What this is an increase in flexibility, and also in being upfront with the American public on the regulatory process. So it's shining daylight on our regulatory process, which is what we're trying to do across the board.
We appreciate your time, appreciate what you're doing, and I guess the only question I have left to ask, are you ready to hire out to drive a tractor for farmers yet?
So, you know, last week, I've been doing a lot of farm tours wherever I travel. Every state I go to, I try to meet with farmers, and I try to meet with like the State Farm Bureau people, and last week I was with the Farm Bureau in Missouri and the Corn Farmers Association. And I pointed out that every time I go, I see these incredible looking tractors and combines and equipment, and I ask if I can drive one. And my staff says, no, you can't. Liability, insurance, you can't do it. Last week, I was in Missouri, and a very kind farmer, and I won't say his name because I don't want to get him in trouble, allowed me to drive his tractor. Not very far, but it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And it's great for me to get out and meet with farmers all over the country, because it's important for me to hear firsthand what the concerns are that the farmers have. Because under the Trump administration, the EPA is here to work cooperatively with the farmers, which hasn't always been the case in our past.
Again, it's the Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, Andrew Wheeler, on today's Agribusiness Report.